What was something your family did that you didn't realize wasn't normal until you did it in front of others? This one is kind of reverse, but I still remember the first time I visited a friend's house and discovered that their dad just lived with them all the time. For context, mine showed up once a year for my birthday until I was about 9, then never again after that. My mom is a yawn yeller. When she yawns, you can hear it from anywhere in the house. One time my sister had a friend over, and we were in the basement. My mom yawned upstairs, and my sister's friend asked, "Was that a coyote dancing around our Christmas tree?" Not in like a satanic ritual sort of way, only during the holidays and your usual Christmas songs are sung. Did this every Christmas throughout my childhood on my mom's side. Apparently it's a Danish tradition, I believe. I brought it up to my friends one time and they thought I was insane. Seemed normal to little Omi. Turns out that sarcasm is considered really offensive by a lot of people. For my father it was basically the default mode of conversation, and I was 23 years old when someone finally explained to me that, no, this is not how it works for most humans. We had a bag in our deep freezer where we kept kitchen scraps until garbage night. It was pretty genius, but creeped some of my friends out when we would raid the Hot Pocket stash. Flush the toilet after peeing. We tried to save water, so we basically peed until someone took a dump. Then one day I went to a family friend's house and freaked everyone out because I didn't flush. Edit 1 forgot to mention that we were a family of 5 with one working toilet, and my dad shits like 3 times a day. Edit 2 our bathroom was on the 2nd floor and it had a window. We stored bread in the microwave. Loaves, buns, rolls, you name it. To use the microwave we would pull it all out and then put it all back. Not sure why I didn't question this growing up. That's just where the bread was kept. My parents always had an open house policy. We lived in a tiny house but friends were always welcome to drop by. My friends were always welcome to stay. The house was always full of people. Holidays, big meals with lots of family and friends. Went to my in-laws' strict appointment-only meals are had in silence even at holidays, and in 20 years I have never been allowed upstairs and neither has my daughter. She's 17 now and just doesn't visit them anymore because they are so weird. Husband avoids them as much as possible. I'm not sure if they are the odd ones or my parents are. 3 out of 4 members of my immediate family have the same condition where we grow benign tumors in our brain and spine, so conversations about brain surgery and muscle wastage and loss of function are common. I knew it wasn't normal, but we kinda keep forgetting how most healthy people react to I'm losing the ability to move my toes. It's annoying. Use assorted German words in casual conversation, which as a child I assumed were English until I got confused stares from friends. My family has been in the US since 1902. Oh, definitely casually telling my friends sexual conversations that my mom and I had. Turns out my mom was oversharing my whole life and I never knew it was weird. Edit when I found out it was weird and talked to her about it, she said in a very sad voice, "But you're the one person who really understands me and who I can talk to about everything." She made it a solid year of trying before she slipped up and told me a story about how my stepdad fingered her in her sleep. People are absolutely baffled that my parents are still friends after separating, and that my dad and my stepdad get along so well. They even kept living together until mom bought her house. Dad kept the original house, and when my stepdad came to visit from his home country, he'd stay at home too. My parents hold no ill will towards each other at all, and have always gotten along well. They just grew into different people and realized they wanted different things out of life. Their houses are 10 minutes apart and they invite one another over for dinner all the time. They still help each other out when one of them needs something, they still do activities together, and they'll sometimes drive together to come visit me too. Many of my friends whose parents have separated have shared what amounts to horror stories about it. It sounds like a lot of separations are aggressive, violent even, and definitely not as chill as my parents' separation was. Seriously, the hardest part of all this for me is deciding whose house I'm staying at when I visit home. Lol. My mom and I have had this inside joke where we go "don't talk to me" or "don't even look at me" in response to stupid shit. I don't remember how or when it started, but I've been doing it since I was a wee kid. I didn't realize how odd it was until I said "fine, don't talk to me" then in response to my mom telling me I couldn't get a video game I asked for, and a woman in the aisle with us got offended. She pulled my mom aside and told her I don't need to be talking to her like that and she needs to teach me how to respect her. Woo. My mom explained that it's a joke that we do, but she doesn't think the woman believed her. A family towel. We had a towel rack, and we'd just hang our towels. It wasn't designated to anyone in particular, and every few days we'd just replace the dirty towel with a clean one. In college, a friend came to visit our home and she very politely asked why we all use the same towel. It just never occurred to me that that was weird. Until I was 16-17 I thought it was a normal thing to call a portable air heater a kurperdub, which in Polish is a combination of 3 beginnings of curse words like SHTPSFK, For example, I realized it was my family idiolect when during winter break in high school I went with a bunch of friends to the mountains and the refuge was extremely cold. So my friend and I went down to ask for a heater and I 16 or 17 at the time but I had pigtails and looked about 12 back then asked the old guy at the reception for a Quirky. The panicked look at the poor dudes and my friend's face told me I said something very wrong. Apparently, the story behind calling the heater a Quirky is that when I was born it was in very cold September and, as the central heating was not running, my parents would use a huge, old, wheel-less heater when bathing me. It would always fall on my dad when he tried to set it up. Hence every portable heater in our family household is called after the expletives that my dad would call out. Everyone in the family, extended family included, likes each other and gets along. One boyfriend commented that my family was weird because everyone got along, no massive fights, screaming and yelling each holiday, bringing up decade-old grudges once or twice a year. Like he has never met his uncle because his dad and uncle hate each other too much. Respond to sneezes with a sarcastic, "You are not blessed." I got a lot of weird looks in school from my teachers. I about killed a distant family member from a surprise laughing fit. My response sent him into the lol. He was actually kind of impressed we had that sense of humor at our young age. It seems far more common for parents to be very overtly cautious controlling of their kids' activities. Not that my parents let us have free rein but they trusted my brothers and I to walk around the neighborhood usually in big groups. Bedtimes weren't really enforced after like age 10, and never on weekends. Ironically later I was pretty often the safe friend to the more cautious parents. Because I turned out real boring. I was probably a bit of a special case because I've always had a touch of anxiety, but I think having my parents' trust kind of removed the rebellion of it. Added, well, apparently it's not as uncommon as I thought. Hello other boring free-range kids. Also I've been told the original expression is free reign but I think both versions work so reign stays. Smoking indoors. I didn't do it, but my GF at the time had a veritable panic attack when we had my mother over for dinner. It was the first and only time my mother came to visit. Apparently it isn't normal to do grave rubbings. When I was little and went to graveyards with my family sometimes they would bring paper and crayons to rub old dates and names onto them like a leaf rubbing. I was reminiscing on this once with my friends and realized that these rubbings weren't a normal thing to do once they all gave me horrified looks. My parents were hardcore penny pinchers when I was growing up, even though they both had decent jobs. Our water usage among other things was controlled and timed which led to me washing dishes in a certain way that minimized the number of times I opened the faucet. Over the years, my parents' tedious money-saving methods began to fade but a few things didn't, our dishwashing method being one of them. One night, a friend of mine invited me over and I stayed for dinner. I offered to help with the dishes. It only took a few dishes before my friend was like, "What are you doing? Why are you washing in dirty water?" He then proceeded to turn the faucet wide open. I felt so damn wasteful at that moment. It felt like I was watching dollar bills go down the drain. I was expecting his parents to go off any minute for being so wasteful but nothing happened. They probably thought I was weird for reusing the dirty water. This method of washing dishes was normal for them yet felt so taboo to me. I was 13 at the time. Sleep after the meal during holiday get-togethers. Just the men, the women exchanged would all go into the living room and watch football and kinda doze. No big deal. Did this once at my girlfriend's family Christmas and evidently I embarrassed her or maybe offended someone. Either way I was the only one asleep while everyone else was energetic and conversing lively with family. I was woken up by girlfriend with an angry tone asking why I was asleep during the party. I was comfortable, relaxed, and we just had a lot of food. Made sense to me. My mom made up words. I didn't know this until I was an adult, out in the world saying fake words and having no idea. Wank high jawed means when you've been laying or sitting down and your pants need to be adjusted. Goo goo baby small baby that still makes cooing sounds and probably still wears a diaper. Just the memorable one, there are so many. Apparently it's not normal for your parents to openly and graphically discuss their sex life with you. And it's definitely not normal for your parents to have multiple partners younger than you. Added since so many are asking, my parents didn't start this behavior until I was an adult. When I say the partners are younger, I mean they're sleeping with college kids while I'm in my mid to late 20s. We kinda itch the inside of our throat ears by making with our throats? And putting one finger in your ear and moving it real fast? Apparently this is very weird and my friends still look at me funny. Constantly singing. My dad sings and plays the guitar, my mom was in chorus in high school, and 2 out of my 3 sisters take theater class and vocal lessons, and one of those sisters plays the ukulele. I constantly hear people walking around the house singing. And sometimes we'll do impromptu musical numbers belting out different songs from shows and movies that we like. Because of this, I've kind of picked up a habit of singing without even realizing it. My friends will tease me sometimes when we do group Discord calls and they hear me start singing out of nowhere, but I didn't realize how truly strange it was until I was at a party with some friends. I was in a good mood so I burst into song, and they all just looked at me like I was crazy. That's when I realized that my house is like an Earl musical 24/7, and I guess that's not very common. Edit fix the spelling mistake at the beginning. I was very sleep deprived when I made this post. When we have big family dinners Sunday and GHTS, Thanksgiving, birthday dinners, Christmas, and just regular nightly dinner, my mom would serve us each individually from the kitchen instead of putting the food on the table and letting everyone serve themselves. I didn't realize how weird this was until being a guest at others' family dinners and seeing that not a single one of my friends' moms did this. It makes a lot more sense to let people serve themselves other than children, as they know what they want and how much a lot more than the hostess knows. I asked my friends' parents why there was only one mom. Thought everyone had two. Not the smartest of moves in the 80s. To me it was normal to have parents run out in the middle of anything for fire department calls. It didn't worry me too much until I saw a big-ass farm propane tank explode as my dad went driving up towards the fire. Some of my friends asked if I was concerned about them getting hurt killed while out on a fire call, but it never occurred to me to worry about that because they've usually always came home. My dad ended up in hospital a couple times but I've never worried about that. Now my kid's can grow up with that haha. My parents are very open about their sex lives. I mean there's a lot of fucked up shit on my end but here's something pretty specific. Having dinners as late as 9 p.m. and just sitting there not talking the entire time we ate. This has went on since I was around 9 or 10. Shit absolutely fucked me up when I started seeing my boyfriend and his happy family eating at 6 and being really excited and eager to talk about their days. It makes me think I'm just living with roommates rather than parents. Edit wow, I did not expect my comment to be so relatable. It makes me feel a bit better knowing I'm not alone with this. Thanks everyone for sharing. And to clarify a couple things. My parents specifically are engineers that work from home and basically have their own schedules 24/7 as long as shit gets done, aka they have pretty relaxing jobs. So there's really no excuse for their behavior and bad time management as nearly 50-year-old adults. Having a physical fight at least 3 times a day. But we weren't arguing, kind of like playing fighting games. Having 2 moms, a lot of the family friends were 2-mom households with the occasional 2-dad household. My best friend through junior school had a single mother. I must have been almost 10 when I realized that most families have a mom and a dad. Go for late night walks to the Tim Hortons for donuts. So I grew up in a family full of night owls. We all prefer to sleep in the day and be up at night, and most of us can function on very little sleep when needed. I remember on multiple occasions as a kid being like 8 or 9, playing quietly in my room around midnight while my parents and sisters watched TV downstairs and overhearing somebody say fuck. I could really go for a coffee right about now. And then getting all excited because that usually meant we'd be going for a night walk and getting donuts. I didn't realize it wasn't normal for children to go out at midnight to get donuts until I was being all nostalgic with my friends in my teens and they were like WTF. I was in bed by 7. We buy treats for family every time we leave the house. And by every time, I mean every single time. Every time I get off work, I buy a treat for my siblings to share. Every time someone in the house has an errand to run, they come back with a treat for everyone. Didn't realize it wasn't a normal thing until I asked friends to wait for me while I picked out some snacks to take home. Using baby wipes in the bathroom when we did number 2. I mean I never did it in front of everyone, but every friend's house except for one didn't even have the option to do so. My mom, when she is telling anyone a recipe or even instructing us in the kitchen, uses the statement and then go grrrrrrrr the tomatoes to make a puree of it. I've grown up with it, so I find it normal. I know she means I need to blend juice it in the mixer grinder. Grrrr being the human equivalent of the sound a mixer makes my sister use the same format, when she was discussing a recipe in her college. There were 8-10 people around her, who just looked confused. They asked her to repeat. Then a friend started laughing, realizing that grrrr means using the mixer grinder. My sister took an actual minute to realize that it's not a normal way to say grind that up. We had such a laugh when she came back and told us about the incident. We still use grrrr when communicating at home. When communicating to outsiders, we have stopped ourselves from using that. So have a glass of milk with every meal, stealing food from each other's plate at dinner time. Once we had finished our meal, you would pick at the slowest ones, usually mums. Wasn't until I did it at my now wife's house that I learned no one else did this. We would have a plate of sliced cheddar on the table every morning for breakfast, and eat pieces of cheese as part of the meal. Apparently other people don't do that. My dad jizzed on my siblings and I a lot. He was born in Iran, So he had a little bit of a language gap even as an adult. And what he would do to mess with my siblings and I is he would use his finger and thumb to punch the tiniest amount of skin on our wrists. And he would call it jizz, because I think that's what he thought the sound of that was if you could get close enough to hear it. So the scene occurred plenty of times where my brother, sister, and I would be running away from him in the house, pleading not to get jizzed on. Years later, someone explained to me that the noise Iranians think bees make is jizz. So therefore, my dad was buzzing us. Not jizzing. Thankfully, I was diagnosed with severe asthma as a baby. They'd find me blue in the lips. My parents smoked around me until I was 8. They also stopped taking me to the doctor once I outgrew the hypoxia. My childhood was filled with suffering and shortness of breath. I thought everyone got sick like me and that I was just a massive wimp. It's hard to type on an iPad. Giving nicknames to everything we see. And talking to everything we see. I used to think it's normal to have a conversation with every pigeon on my way. But then I did it while walking with my friend. And that was the time when I found out that my parents are weirdos. Eating ribs with a fork and knife. I was 17 when I found out that it is okay to pick them up and eat them with your hands. Use applesauce as a condiment for hot dogs. This blew up while I was asleep. Just to clarify, I'm American not German, but it's cool that people think I am. Maybe my ancestors were? The applesauce adds sweetness kinda like ketchup does. I switched the ketchup for applesauce, add mustard to balance out the sweetness and top it with chili. Cook almost exclusively boxed canned foods and nothing fresh or from scratch ever. I genuinely had no idea that other people didn't eat this way until I went to college. Friends and roommates commented on the strange assortment of boxed foods I had, like instant mashed potatoes or bags of instant soup, and how disgusting they looked. I was mortified to learn that my whole life I had been eating really gross and processed foods, all the whole thinking they were normal and real. Ever since then I make a conscious effort to always get a lot of produce at the grocery store, something we never had when I was growing up, and also to learn to make new things from scratch whenever time allows. We keep our syrup in fridge. Apparently people keep it in the cupboard. My parents are super chill. They had this sex talk with us before we went to school, so when we were 5. They told us we're allowed to experiment, but only with their permission. My sister and I have both smoked and drank in front of them. They said if we want to start having sex, we can, but we tell them so that they can buy the condoms. If we do badly in a test, they ask if we did the best we could do. If we did, then they're proud. If we didn't, they're still not upset. If we have any problems we can talk to them. My mom has actually given me sex tips. We're not at all interested in each other, just comfortable. But when I mention it to my friends, they said their parents beat them if they don't do well at school. They avoid the topic of sex like the plague and barely talk to each other when they're not fighting. Not my family but my BFs. I was at their house and his parents were making dinner in the kitchen, prepping vegetables, while we and his brothers hung out in the living room. After a bit his dad comes in with sliced discs of raw potato and hands one to each of us. I was like, what am I meant to do with this? And they all go eat it. It's a snack. I took a little bite and it tasted just as starchy and bland and downright odd as I imagined it would. Apparently they do that every time they have potatoes? I didn't even know they could be eaten raw. The Irish, man. Weird folk. Eating dessert any time of the day. We ate dessert like dinner, sometimes with a side of ice cream, cake and cookies organized on the plate like a balanced meal. I was punished as a child. Not the standard put in timeout, or grounded from certain things. I learned in college that a lot of people my age 18 to 23 didn't get spanked with a belt to the point welts formed and it hurt to sit down, bars of soap shoved into their mouths after saying a naughty word, pulled down the stairs and smacked across the face repeatedly after getting caught doing something wrong, having things thrown at them, or being called terrible names. My dad liked calling me a queer bastard. We keep our trash can in our pantry. We had a sock basket. It was just a basket of socks, none of them were paired and they were all different sizes. The entire family just went and picked 2 random socks every day. In all honesty, it was a pretty convenient method. I still don't pair or wear matching socks to this day and it seems so pointless to me. Double dipping chips. Had no idea that frowned upon. My family eats ice cream out of glass cups. It drives my husband insane. Added glass drinking cups, sometimes plastic. Not necessarily me doing it in front of others but going to friends' houses as a teenager and witnessing them. I went to a few friend events and birthdays as a kid but I never really had any freedom. It was reserved for special events that were near my childhood apartment, since my dad was the only one who drove until my sister was of age. In most Asian cultures, we have honorifics and we don't call our elders by their names. Filipinos are more simplified than say Japanese, so my brother and sister were always kuya and ate kuya and ate, but so were my cousins. We also had nicknames for everyone. In my freshman year of high school, I got to hang out with loads of my friends and they all referred to their older siblings as their names. I was so confused. Where are your honorifics? Isn't it disrespectful to call your elders by their name? Hearing my friends call out for their older brothers and sisters to come eat at the dinner table, with their actual name, shook teenage me. It still weirds me out a little, but I'm more desensitized to it now. 1. We've never had a dishwasher. We were the dishwashers, and so when I met my boyfriend's family for dinner, I helped tidy up afterwards and had no idea how to work the dishwasher. They all looked at me like I was the biggest idiot. 2. It's always been a tradition in our house to feed the birds squirrels in our garden every morning before leaving the house, a few nuts, seeds, etc. When I moved in with my boyfriend, he was like, "WTF are you doing outside every morning?" So I told him. He now thinks I'm Disney Princess or Aura, talking to animals every day, personifying inanimate objects, tasting everyone else's food and drink and making everyone else taste yours. At restaurants, the question "what did you order?" is always answered with "wanna try?" and a forkful being handed to you or "ooh, wanna sip?" while a glass is being thrust into your hand. If the whole family is together, it can take several minutes for everyone to start eating their meals because of the forks and glasses being passed up and down the table. I didn't realize that most people don't do this until after I'd met my husband. In his family, you do not eat after other people. And it would make me crazy that he absolutely would not let me taste his food. If you wanted this, you should have ordered it. It took me a long time to understand that wasn't being selfish and that most people think what my family does is gross. Edit. I am so glad to hear from so many people who are sharers. I read all the replies to my husband and he is completely astounded to find out that people other than my family do this. Please continue to shove your forks in other people's face and spread the joy. We keep scissors in the freezer. One day, in true dad fashion, my dad made a joke about cold cuts, by placing the scissors in the freezer. We all laughed and then thought, hey, that's not a bad idea. Between my dad and us 4 girls, we were always losing the scissors. But putting them in the freezer, such an odd place, seemed to really stick. Now at 22 I still keep my scissors in the freezer, and it still gets me some weird looks, lol. But, I never lose them. My dad always slept on the couch. Always. Mom slept by herself in her room. My sister and I never thought anything of it until we were old enough for sleepovers and our friends were totally confused by it. Not something I've ever done in front of other people, but I get scandalized reactions sometimes when I tell people that my parents spanked me and my brothers. Maybe it's just not as common outside of the South because a bunch of my friends' parents definitely did it too. I know corporal punishment has fallen out of favor and that's probably a good thing, but sometimes people react like I should have been traumatized by it and I wasn't. Whenever my mom cooks ground beef, like you do for tacos or spaghetti with meat sauce, she drains off most of the fat grease that comes off. She really prefers to get as much off as possible, so usually she takes some paper towels and sticks them in the pan toward an edge. Then tilts the pan so the grease runs down and the towels soak it up. Easy to just pick them out and toss them in the trash. I've also heard grease is bad for drain lines and septic tanks, so that makes some sense to do that instead of pour it down the sink. I've picked that habit up from her. The first time I made spaghetti at college in the dorm kitchenette, I got some pretty weird looks. Apparently folks like to keep the grease for flavor. I don't cook for myself often enough that it would make sense to keep it, and I don't find leaving it in meat appetizing either, as it gets that white fatty look after sitting in the fridge. Swear like a sailor. My family is weird with gifts. Like, really weird. When I was a child, it wasn't uncommon for me to know exactly what I was getting for my birthday or for Christmas. Even if I wasn't there when it was bought, there's a chance it was just told to me. And while the whole "it's the thought that counts" was expected out of the receiver, it certainly wasn't by the giver. It was kind of common to receive a gift and an apology the gift isn't better at the same time, before you even knew what it was. This shit was completely normal to me, right up until the first Christmas with my GF, where I handed her a gift and said sorry, it was the best I could afford. She shut that shit down hard, and I now realize just how kind of fucked up the whole thing was. The rest of my family still acts the same way. Last Christmas my mother was super annoyed that I was making her wait until Christmas to know what I got her. She kept on asking what I got her and how much it cost. When I refused to answer, she finally just outright asked, "Is it something I'll like?" Like, "No mom, I got you something that I was pretty sure you'd hate for Christmas just for shits and giggles." Singing Happy Birthday a second time, second verse, where everyone sings as loudly and off-key as humanly possible. No one is ever at the same point of the song by the end of this nightmare of a noise. I have to say it is fun as hell, but anyone new to our birthday celebrations has no idea what is happening. Talking about the size of our shits. My sister will call me, while on the toilet, and tell me about how big her turd is. Realized in college that this wasn't something other people do. Fortunately my roommate found humor in me barging into the room loudly talking about how big of a dump I just dropped in the toilet. Shopping with my parents, I guess? When I was a teenager, I went shopping with my mother all the time. For us, it was a good time to just have a chat while we were just bustling around, plus my mother doesn't have a fantastic memory so I could remember things she might have forgotten. I didn't realize it might not be a normal thing until I overheard a friend gossiping about someone and saying yeah, he was shopping with his mother, like a baby. I grew up in a bit of a weird household. Mom definitely has some sort of paranoid histrionic issues and mental illness runs in her side of the family. So there were a lot of anachronisms in my childhood. Here are a few. You can never open windows. Or the blinds on the windows in bedrooms. Keep them shut or people can see into the house and will steal you. Didn't know salt could go on food until college. Mind blown. Being verbally minorly physically abused by your parents to toughen you up because you didn't have siblings who would have done so. Thinking it was normal for moms to get so mad at you for using up the last of the flour or turning on the oven? That they would throw things at you, call you selfish and ungrateful, hit the walls, say they wish they never adopted. Only to tearfully apologize hours later and say that they were a horrible mom and you had to console them into being okay at like age 15, not being allowed to leave the house almost ever except for sports and one activity with a friend on weekends. If I did leave the house I had to text or call to check in at 30 minutes increments or risk being yelled at mercilessly. Took me a while to break from that one as an adult. Still feel like I have to text my mom sometimes when I'm going to the grocery store. I managed to get physically independent at around 20. I'm 23 now, about to start a master's and I'm almost fully financially independent in therapy. Lamau. In my house, the kitchen trash can is located at the end of the cabinet, on the floor. All my friends would go to throw away trash under the sink, where they kept the trash can. Slapping my brother, cut a pizza with scissors. This isn't my family but my ex-BF used to pick up his mom, throw her over his shoulder and spank her. She would then pinch his butt. It was creepy AF. Peeing with the door wide open. Pooping needed a closed door mainly because my family hated smelling shit, yet whenever someone would pee it was normal to just walk over to the bathroom and take a leak. Others include eating meals everywhere. Yes, I ate my dinner while in bed and having the stairs be the timeout corner. We moved around a lot when I was growing up until we settled into a place when I was in my teens. I thought everyone done this until I went to someone's house and they had stayed there since they were born. I absolutely could not believe this. I thought every family moved around to find the right house. Whenever it was Christmas Day my parents would always hide a pickle ornament in the tree. Whoever found it first got to open the first gift and also get a small gift like a candy bar. We have done this for years and whenever I tell my friends they always look at me funny. It is supposedly something that is very common in Germany. I still think everyone does this even if everyone I do it in front of says otherwise. According to people I know, most people open a bag of chips and then put a clothespin or something on it to keep it closed. My mom showed me how to close the bag in such a way the chips won't get stale or whatnot. First time someone saw me do that they called me a wizard and my GF always gives me her bag of chips to close. I became vegetarian very early on, like when I was 8. I hated the taste meat with a passion. How could anyone eat that shit? Well, turns out that my parents were paranoid about food poisoning, so whenever they cooked meat or ordered it in restaurants, it was way overcooked, rubbery and chewy. I always thought that was what meat tasted like. At 25 my GF forced me to eat a medium rare Wagyu steak. I instantly fell in love with it. It tasted so soft and silky. Edit spellings. My mom would occasionally put dead mice, prairie dogs, other rodents in the freezer until trash day. Sneeze like 6 times in a row. Literally everyone in my family does this and apparently no one else in the world does. I was very surprised to learn my friends had never used a cheese slicer. I've been using one my whole life. Using a knife to cut cheese just seems like far too much of a pain. Biting people. My sister and I would play gnaw on each other and our dad when we were much younger. One day in 2nd grade some kid put his arm around my neck and I bit him. ICS for the day for me. I had no idea biting was such a big deal. Reused paper towels. Putting ketchup on hot dogs in Chicago. All my life I only ate ketchup on hot dogs, but if you live in Chicago that's apparently a big no-no. Rename various foods like quesadillas were Mexican pizzas and chicken sauté were chicken lollipops. Dipping bread into the tray of meat juices after roasting a joint of meat. Beef juices is the best. My big one was I was allowed to curse. Granted, we weren't allowed to curse all of the time, but if we were really feeling our emotions and wanted to emphasize a word it was fair game. I don't know how I made it to 2nd grade without cursing in school, but I did. I had this one teacher who would always give me shit for my Italian tuxedo. Uts? Product variant 6,173,122 SRC code 209 NCID PLBL Google Plage NCID SCPLP 9539498 SC NTID 9,539,498 SID PLBL Google Plage NSC Shopping Prospects Non-DN Blair Mobile GC LDE Cubchmigs 3W3J786 Quive 24 Faber 1 NX of Peak IASA Eagle 9 DVD Bway. Being a little Guido, I always looked like I was going to put a hit on someone. Anyway, some of these are made with this fabric that makes a swish sound when you walk. This one teacher would always make me take my jacket off, leaving me with just a turtleneck on. One day I had enough and refused to take it off. She told me that if I don't take it off then she would send me to the principal's office and they will call my mom. I responded with a "see if I fucking care." Well, I didn't care and my mom had my back 100. The rant she went on was legendary. First about my choice of outfits, which were her choice, then how she felt the school wasn't letting gets express their emotions. They came to an agreement. I could wear my full Italian tuxedo, but I wouldn't curse in second grade anymore. I grew up largely with my great-grandmother, so even as a child my speech was always overly formal. Haha. I'm Icelandic, so picture a 6-year-old speaking like an 80-year-old to fellow first graders. My mother would put nutritional yeast in our morning orange juice. And the OJ was the concentrated type that comes in a cardboard tube with tin caps, that you have to mix with water. Not so much as it was something we did. Like I'm South African and I moved here a few years back. And in my old town everyone had long ass fangs and they were pretty common. No, we're not vampires, I think it's genetic. My uncle was my dentist and he also had them, but he lived a few hours away, so I assumed they were normal everywhere until I got to school in America and a girl asked me to bite her neck. Needless to say I don't show my teeth when I smile anymore. Sharing bath towels. For years I used the same towel that my mom, my brothers, and my dad used before me, or they used the same towel I'd used. It wasn't until recently that my boyfriend told me that isn't normal. I now make sure to use a clean towel after showering at home. Poop knife. I brought up that we used to catch lightning bugs and in the morning my parents would have swapped them out for pennies but told us they magically transform overnight. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy. I assumed everyone's family did it like the tooth fairy or something. My brother and I used to pull our pants all the way down to the ground when we peed. Not after kindergarten started. Never again. Reading time. When I was a kid, after dinner and homework, we'd all go to the living room with our books and just sit together, silently reading. Socially inept me brought a book to my first sleepover and waited patiently for reading time. Never happened. I was so confused when their parents just went to bed when it got late. I couldn't even find the family bookcase. It goes without saying I was not invited to many sleepovers. My dad used spreadsheet software prior to Excel to make a chore chart. Each chore got me a different amount of money and I had to check off what I did each day and then I had to add it all up at the end of the week to figure out my allowance. Friends who came over thought it was weird because they just got their allowance. As an adult though, I appreciate it. It gave me some agency. If I didn't want to practice music one day, fine. I just didn't get paid for it then. If I wanted to earn extra I could do an extra day of something that wasn't expected of me. I was learning the value of work and money and practicing addition from a young age and I'm great with money now. My dad is an alcoholic, so as a kid I thought arguing every day, screaming at each other is something people do when they are in a relationship. When I was maybe 5 I was dreaming about a lovely house, thousands of dogs, cats, bunnies and a husband who isn't drinking and smoking. I was also imagining our fights in a good way. Just like other people are viewing kissing and hugging, I didn't even know people after married people are doing that. My parents would also beat me and my sister from time to time and were screaming every time we did something wrong. Imagine my surprise when one of my friends told me she broke a vase and her parents told her to pay for it instead of screaming and beating her. When you've finished a jigsaw, put the edges in a separate bag so you don't have to search for them next time. People looked at me with disgust. I didn't realize people actually enjoyed that part. Not just my family but Somali culture in general. We will eat a banana with rice and pasta, and I don't mean as a dessert, but we would cut it up and eat them together, which I really enjoyed but always surprised other people. Lol.